Welcome back. Today I want to give you an amazing infographic of how the four proofs, the bliss that's in the body when we enter into meditation from the very beginning, how that fits together with the freeze response in the entire meditative mellows paradigm of meditation. So it's really, really valuable to understand these things, how that goes up and how it goes down. And when you put it all together, you begin to understand the process that's happening to us inside of our meditations. And that's extremely valuable because, as the Greeks said, meditation is this vast sea. And what are we going to put our hands on? There's not much to put our hands on and understand the process so that we can accomplish the process more easily and effortlessly. And that's what having these clues along the way, this trail of breadcrumbs into the unknown, having that little trail is so amazing. It's so valuable. And that's why on this channel, so many yogis are getting so much success. So let's get into it. So I put this picture together to try and explain to some of my students how the four proofs and how the freeze response, how they fit together. Simply, what happens to us in meditation is that we begin to experience the rapture of concentration and the light of concentration. And so we see the spiritual eye maybe spontaneously, or we get into the deep bliss of the four proofs that I talk about over and over again on this channel. We get into that deep bliss and we experience that rapture of concentration. And that's that first peak that you see coming up the line. That first peak is the four proofs of meditative mellows. Now, there are other kinds of rapture that you might feel in your body. So you can say to me, well, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? Well, I'm looking for the four proofs that are across the board, the easiest to feel and the most archetypal for most meditative practitioners. And so you might encounter something else which is also blissful, and that's wonderful. But these four proofs are kind of set up as a handrail so that we can all have a common understanding of the process that we're going through. So that's that first side of the mountain. You see that mountain in the center of the diagram? That's that first side. The rapture of meditation, of concentration, specifically goes up and up and up. As we learn to look inside, that rapture increases. It grows and grows, and we're scaling the mountain of rapture. What a beautiful thing. And then finally we reach the peak of that, which is when you feel the fourth proof and you feel all of your skin vibrating or tickling or tingling in a very rapturous, blissful kind of way. That's the peak. You've reached the peak of rapture. So let's talk about the four proofs very quickly. Make sure we don't leave any of them out. So the first proof is that your hands get hot and heavy as you induce heart rate variability resonant breathing. As you get into that variance of the heart, you'll notice as you sit very still, SVS, right? Sit very still. We want to sit very still in our meditation as we amal. Always make the out-breath longer, right? And so as we're doing that work, we'll notice that our hands begin to get hot and heavy. They may also feel like they're expanding. There's lots of different ways that you can feel it, but if you look at your hands as you're in heart rate variability resonance, you'll notice, oh, they're different. And I think they might be hot and heavy, like Forrest was telling me about. And so that's the first proof. You've got it. Second thing you might notice is that your lip might tingle as the blood recedes from your lip and goes back in. It's just a very light little thing. And then the third thing, you're putting all this pressure on the dorsal vagal complex from the way that you're breathing with heart rate variability resonant breathing. And so all that pressure, you begin to feel it in the dorsal vagal complex. You might feel it anywhere along the spine. Anywhere along the spine, you might notice it. But especially around the diaphragm and the upper spine, you might notice that pressure going on the dorsal vagal complex from the diaphragm coming up. All that pressure translates to the dorsal vagal complex right along the spine. You feel it, and it can feel very blissful, or it can feel very cool, like a cool breeze along your spine. It can feel tingly. Any of those things are the third proof. And if you're not noticing it, take a few short breaths in and long breaths out. Maximize that pressure. As you take a short breath in and a long breath out, do a few of those in a row. See if you can start to feel that pressure translating to the dorsal vagal complex, awakening the dorsal vagal complex, awakening you to a tingly, excited kind of bliss. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And then you just let that seep through your psychology, seep through your psyche, and see what it does to you. It's pretty amazing. So that's the third proof. And then the fourth proof, as we're SVS, sitting very still, we might notice that all of the skin, maybe our hands first, maybe our arms, maybe our chest, maybe our legs, maybe our face. It could be anywhere. It could begin anywhere. So we want to look all over the skin and say, is any of this tingling or a little bit of like a crawling sensation? All of that is the fourth proof. Any of that is the fourth proof. If you get a little bit, you got the whole proof. That's it. And you might notice that it spreads to other parts of the body. So it's a beautiful, blissful thing. Those are the four proofs. And as we scale that, as they increase, that's the first side of the mountain. That is the rapture of concentration. Beautiful, beautiful thing. And then what will happen, that skin tingling is usually the peak of the rapture. As it overwhelms you completely, you feel it throughout the whole body. That's really the peak of that rapture. And what will happen at this point is you'll start inducing, because we're working so much with the dorsal vagal complex, we start inducing that freeze response of the dorsal vagal complex. It's not a negative freeze. It's not a restricting freeze. It is a glorious, beautiful freeze where you feel like, I don't have to move ever. This is so great. I've been struggling in my meditation. I want to sit still, and I've been struggling with my mind and my body. And now it's just easy because the freeze response is there for you. It begins to take over. First, the skin might tingle. Then parts of the body might disappear. One of my friends wrote to me, he says, my joints are disappearing. I thought, oh, how interesting. A lot of times people say, my lower body disappeared from my awareness. It's not like, oh my God, I look down and I don't have any legs. It's not like that. It's disappearing from your awareness. And so another person wrote to me, he says, I feel like my head is over here and my body went over here. That's because the internal perception of your body is shifting around as you do the practice. It's totally cool, totally awesome, and it means you're in that freeze response. So we got to the top of the mountain of rapture, and now we're going down the easy way, down into the freeze response. And so we might notice the tingling. We might notice numbness, like the whole body has become numb. Parts of the body may begin to disappear, like I said, and eventually the whole body disappears from your awareness. Now, the thing here to understand is that if you have a little bit of the freeze response, you have the freeze response. So if any of those things begin to happen, you're in that downward descent of the freeze response into a very deep meditation. And yes, in the end, the whole body will disappear, but you might reach an extremely deep state. And if you put your mind back on the body, you will notice that the body is kind of there. because you're putting your attention back on it. And so the thing to do is just let it go, let it go. But this is a process, and you have to let your psyche become okay with that. So it's kind of, that's why it's a slow descent into that state where you're letting go of the body, you're letting go of the perception of the body, and you're okay with that. You don't want to rush it. Just let it happen easily and effortlessly. And now you're sinking into a beautiful, deep meditation where the body disappears and you get the roll up into the brain, the state that Lahir Mashaya called Krishna, when it's just you and your brain, when it's just you and the spiritual eye. And that spiritual eye is the presence of the divine inside of your yogic experience. And so it's just you, and that state is Krishna. It's beautiful because the medulla chakra is the Krishna chakra beautifully. So that's the state that we're looking for, and that's what happens at the end of that descent, is the body has disappeared, we're rolled up into the brain, we've gone through heart rate variability, we've gone through the rapture of concentration, and now we're entering into a beautifully deep and it's just a delicious state. The freeze response is a delicious state. But that rapture went up and then it kind of decreased. And so you might notice that. It's kind of like learning to tie your shoes. In the beginning, it's a very big deal. I'm going to tie my shoes. Don't anybody help me. I'm going to do it myself. And then after a while, you're like, yeah, I tie my shoes. It's not, it doesn't, it ceases to be a very big deal. And that's what's happening in our meditation. We're going up in rapture. And then the rapture kind of decreases. It's still there when we check. If we go back to the body, we might notice that rapture. But because we're entering into the freeze response so deeply, that rapture of the body will diminish. And another thing will begin to take its place. And that's the very, very deep bliss of the left amygdala. So I have this training called the Big Bliss Training. And we first learn how to access that very deep bliss in the heart. That's the first place where it's projected into the body. That's our first handle on learning how to access that very deep bliss. And in the process, this process I'm showing here of the mountain of rapture and coming down into the valley of the freeze, that process is also revealing to you that very, very deep bliss. So the rapture will decrease, but the very big bliss may begin to take over. That's just amazing. That's just glorious, right? So all of that is to put in your mind and say, well, this is where I'm going. Forrest has given me these railings in the unknown so that I can progress in my practice. And when something comes to me in meditation, I'll go, oh my goodness, I know what that is. This is where I am. And I can keep going in the same direction and I will find more. And isn't that glorious? So I hope you love this. If you did, be sure to hit that bell down below so I can see all of you next time. God bless.